Other than that, I don't know who else.
Okay, if we can get started now for the, what date is it today? The April 9th meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit Board of Directors. Would the clerk please call the roll to establish a quorum?
Director Budge? Here. Director Hanson?
Here.
Director Harris?
Here.
Director Hume?
Here.
Director Jennings is on his way. Director Miller?
Here.
Director Morin?
Here.
Director Natoli?
Here.
Director Chenier?
Here.
Director Cerna?
Here.
Chair Kennedy.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum at 100 votes. This meeting of the Sacramento Regional Transit District will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel. Tonight's meeting will air on April 11th at noon and replayed on April 14th at noon and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. It is also closed captioned. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker card located at the rear of the room and provide it to me or Adam. Please speak into the microphone and state your name for the record. We would appreciate everyone turning off their cell phones. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'll please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public addresses the board on matters not on the agenda.
Okay, we have 3 cards. First, Jeffrey Tartagia.
Well, we're going to give this a shot. What I'm going to talk about is communication. This last Tuesday, I got reminded that for politicians, seeming have not lost the ability to really, really listen. So I will say to you is communication again. And I use the example is because in this next meeting that you are proposing at St. Should we say, I think McGeorge, what your agenda and your plan is, is a little puzzling. I only see on there the sheet that says that you're going to have a meeting from 1 until 5. What you intend on doing, and then getting the acknowledgement it is open to the public and where it is being located at, leaves me a little disconcerted because you just had a meeting where you invited some organizations to meet with the consultant to do a prairie dog timesheet. This is dealing with your route optimization. I hope that if you guys are going to do a route optimization, you really have the real RT map in front of you and you consider what are the things that are, I'll call RT's limitations and failings, as well as what in the world it would look like if you had from the 6 o'clock in the morning to midnight, which is something that RT has only got light rail on in a limited capacity. But this is all on bus, so look and consider what is it and comparing it to other organizations. I bring up communication again because I will use an example. I put in a problem at 65th Light Rail Station. I said I am at the high platform and I observe that the drainage is blocked over at the bus stop where the drivers park their buses. happened to be back when the maintenance guy came in there, and his work order said that, gee, there's a problem with the new, should we say, roofs that have been put on. There's blockage of the drainage. Of course, at that time, there wasn't water blocking over there, but I was there, so I said, no, the issue was over there where when it rains down, the drain is blocked, so it becomes a pool where all of the buses are parked. But this is where communication, it failed to get communicated and get asked back so that it would be in. And that's what the work order said.
Thank you, Mike Barnbaugh.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy, members of the board. Just some things coming up on the calendar. RT has done a great job publicizing tomorrow's event at Smythe Academy School off of Richards Boulevard to help design the Dos Rios station. That will begin at 2 p.m., but there will be another part of it going into the evening till about 6:30 p.m. You can get the details at sacrt.com, SacRT's Facebook page, and Twitter page as well. Again, that's all happening tomorrow. April 11th is a big day. Not only is it the final 2017-2018 Sacramento Kings regular season game of the season at Golden One Center, RT is going to be providing a free ride day to anyone who shows a ticket via mobile or paper ticket. April 11th is also going to be the day the Elk Grove City Council is going to take a look at potential locations for a multimodal station. And April 11th will also be the date, and I will be at the Solano Transportation Authority. They're looking to reimagine 3 Fairfield and Sassoon transit lines into one line that looks like it'll travel from Sacramento and Fairfield to the Pleasant Hill Contra Costa Center BART station. This is going to be phase 1, and they're looking to implement these major service changes effective Sunday, July 1st. This is an opportunity for the fact that there will potentially be in the bid either in 2022 or 2023 an NBA All-Star game in Sacramento. We want to have as many transportation options as possible. So this is going to be another one in a series of set of transportation options, and the organization knows about it. I've talked to them, and I'm going to go, and it will be an honor and privilege to see what will come out of that workshop. I talked to the project coordinator of it, who said they're also going to have a standing open house at the Fairfield Transportation Center this coming Saturday starting at 10 a.m. So I'm looking to follow up and, if possible, to go to that too. Last but not least, this month's meeting of the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority has been canceled. The next meeting is June 20th, 9 a.m. in Martinez. And I'll talk about the San Joaquins as later as it will be on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat Williams.
Hello, lady and gentlemen. I was here 2 months ago, and I talked about the situation with regional transit and paratransit. But first thing I want to talk about is I've been involved with disability individuals, and your chances of being disabled are 5 times greater than dying. So we're going to end up having a lot more people that are going to need services. With that said, though, recently we've had a lot of drivers from paratransit that are moving over to RT. And when I was here 2 months ago, I told you that you could save millions and millions of dollars by basically combining services. And the thought I have is this, that basically you're going to want to expand your services regarding the non-fixed route. You really do. You have to increase that. I mean, like the gentleman spoke earlier, people are getting stranded, and that's not a good thing. And the drivers at paratransit are very, very good. But I've also seen 3,000 drivers come and go. And I don't know if you guys know that, but that's what I've seen. And I do think, Mr. Lee, that we need to look at the issue, because the historical documents were why they had the separate organization was a quote, save money. But the reality is you don't need two managements. You don't need two HRs. Back in 2014-15, you had a situation where you had $228,000 spent by legal over there. Now, I just let you think about that. That's a lot of money. And the reality is that right now there's like $13 million that is going there. Now, could that be brought in-house? You also had a situation where $3.5 million was taken out last year. And the reality is, how long has that been going on for? Just think about that. I am interested in having disability services increased, because we are really literally with the baby boomers, and we're all getting older, myself included. I got gray hair now. We're going to need the services going forward, and it is a really good thing to have it door to door. And basically, it really makes a difference to have somebody that can go to the door and basically pick the person up and deliver them for groceries, for going to a restaurant, all your holidays. It really truly makes a difference in the lives of so many people, plus all the people that are on dialysis. We transport a tremendous amount of people that have dialysis. So my thing is to say, look into bringing it in-house. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item.
Sorry. Consent calendar items 1 through 9, noting that you have a couple of speakers on item 6.
Okay. Are there any questions, consent? None, then
Move the balance of the calendar.
Okay. Moved by Director Budge, second by Director Jennings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Motion carries at 100 votes.
right.
Item number 6, motion rescheduling the next regularly scheduled meeting as a special meeting on April 23rd, 2018, to begin at 1:00 p.m. and to be held at the McGeorge School of Law, 3227 Fifth Avenue, Sacramento. And here to answer any questions is Laura Ham.
Okay. Jeffrey Tardigia.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Point of order. I believe Mr. Tardigia during public comment spoke about this item already. I don't know if he's speaking about it twice, but I believe our rules require that the items on sorry, my mic got turned off. The items to be spoken on for matters not on the agenda should be on matters not on the agenda. Mr. Tardigia, is this duplicative of your earlier comment? Because if so,
Well, it is duplicative of being invited to it. And the second thing is dealing with, are you going to cover ridership in your retreat?
So, Mr. Tardigia, the only thing I would say is that our rules for comments not on the agenda is that they be on items not on the agenda. So, if you, just as a point of,
Would you be willing to yield your time then, Jeffrey?
I yield the times.
Okay.
I may not show up for
Mike Barnbaum.
now.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy and members of the board, and thank you to Clerk to the board, Cindy Brooks, for speaking with me a little bit about this subject matter before you prior to the start of tonight's meeting. Fully realize in the background of it that back in December, when the board had the meeting calendar on its agenda to approve, that at the time, the consultant was not yet on board. No one knew back in December it was going to be Jarrett Walker and how SAC-RT Forward was going to proceed and really kick off as a big project. It kicked off early this month, and we know it's a 15-month project ending June of next year. and hopeful that service changes would take effect as early as January of 2020. That being said, we realize that you have to have a meeting at the location at the time that is proposed in the issue paper, because classes are going to be held otherwise at 5:30 in the evening at that location. What we want to suggest going forward when doing scheduling and planning to bring forth an item to the board, I want to say Monday, December 10th, 2018, is propose a meeting maybe at 5:30 in 2019 at a larger location like McGeorge, another public facility that can accommodate a larger number of people, maybe even work with the Convention and Visitors Bureau if there's a large facility with enough time and notice to get a room for folks, but for 5:30, so that even folks in the evening that have to commit during the daytime to their work schedule can do both in the same day. We realize that this item kind of gives all of us, in a way, like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But we have to proceed forward with the SAC RT Forward project and this retreat at the time and location for this year. But just kind of something to think about when planning meeting schedules in 2019, that now we have everything set in place and can look at something at 5:30 in 2019. So with that, move approval of item 6 with the direction of staff based on the comments mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Is there a motion? Is there another motion?
I'll move approval.
Moved by Director Harris, second by, I didn't hear. Hume. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Thank you. Next item.
Motion carries at 100 votes. The next item is the general manager's report.
Good evening, Chair Kennedy, members of the board, and the public. My first item is try to extend invitation to the public and the board to participate in the brainstorm workshop to help set the design direction for the Dose Rail light rail station tomorrow. But Mike already invited on my behalf, so I'm going to skip that. Next is we will present a number of employee awards for long and dedicated service. For the last quarter, we have total 10 award recipients. 6 are not with us due to the job duties, and 4 are with us tonight. The 6 employees not with us are George Tirado, Michael Palmer, Raymond Adams, Manu D. Ender, Catherine Lanigan, and Omar Soto. The 4 award recipients with us tonight are Rodney Beverly. Rodney? Okay. He's acting transportation superintendent. The second one is Daryl Abencedo. Daryl? Okay, he's here. Darren is our director of civic and track design. The next one is Laura Espinoza. Where's Laura? Good. Laura is our maintenance superintendent, and she directly manages the light rail cleanliness and other initiatives, which you see huge improvement on the inside and outside of light rail vehicles. Then the last one is our famous or beloved Mark Lanigan, our deputy GM and CEO, with 40 years of service. Mr. Chair, can you take a picture with?
Henry and the chair join.
Actually, was it the at the unveiling of the art on the rail cars? They bought a new car washing machine for $1 million, which was really important.
Thank you all for your long and dedicated service. Next, I would like to provide a very brief legislative update. I was recently back in Washington, D.C. for the APTA Legislative Conference and the Finance Committee budget meeting. During my time in D.C., we had very productive discussions and meetings with peer transit agencies, the administration, and the legislators. While I was back there, President Trump signed a $1.3 trillion federal spending bill on later March, and despite his proposed budget to Congress that decreases transportation funding, Congress finally passed a bill that increases the overall federal funding for transportation, primarily for the capital projects, like the projects for new light rail lines, streetcar project, and other capital projects. The total increase is from original $2.4 billion annually to $2.6 billion. It's a $200 million increase. Importantly, included in that funding part is additional $50 million for the downtown streetcar project, which is great news for the project and gets it that much closer to the finish line. And also give us hope in the future, if this trend continues, then we can extend our light rail to Elk Grove and other suburban cities. While in D.C. and Central Size too. While in D.C., I had the privilege of meeting with FTA Administrator Jean Williams and her leadership team. I provided them with an overview of SACAT's most recent initiatives since the last visit in September 2017, when then Chair Morin, Vice Chair Kennedy, and I met with her in Atlanta during APTA annual conference. The administrator is very impressed with and appreciative of SACAT's transformative improvements and offered FTA's strong support to us in the future. In the meantime, we had a very positive discussion regarding the streetcar project too. On a separate note, last Thursday, we were awarded $1.2 million in federal grant. The funding comes from the bus and bus facility infrastructure investment program from the FTA, which makes federal funding available to replace, rehabilitate, and purchase buses and related equipment, and to construct bus-related facilities. The $1.2 million, which we compare to the entire transit industry, we get actually more proportionate shares than others. Even just 1.2 million, but compared to others, we get actually more share than others. This money will go towards replacing and maintaining CNG fueling equipment for our bus fleet. And I would like to thank our congressional delegation, especially Congresswoman Matsui, for the extremely hard work. In further good news, the picture. I would like to let you know that today we start major camera upgrades and implement our public announcement system at the Watt I-80 and Watt West Light Rail stations. we're not only installing new cameras with coordinated viewing angles, we are replacing old cameras with newer technology that has much greater resolution. As you can see from the photos on the screen, the resolution is clear, very clear for facial recognition and to read license plate numbers. And these upgrades and the PA system were made possible by California Proposition 1B funds. And the cameras can be monitored 24/7 by SACRT staff at the Security Operational Center, and also the staff in the Security Operational Center can speak directly to the public in those two stations. That very much concludes all of our station PA system installations and the camera upgrade. So the last piece I'd like to share is, as always, we strive to promote full transparency and provide timely update on the latest progress on major projects to public and the board. Today, I will first ask Laura Ham and James Boyd to provide us with an update on SACRT's route optimization study, known as SACRT Forward. After that, Mark Lanigan will provide an update on microtransit. Then Brent Berlinger will provide an update of SACRT's monthly financial performance for February and an update regarding the 6-month pilot project for student fare reduction and expected student ridership increase. To respect everybody's time and give more time for Q&As, they will each spend only less than 3 minutes on their respective presentations, but certainly spend as much time as needed to answer any questions you might have. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Henry, for that very clear direction and my 3 minutes. I will certainly do my best to stick to it, and then, of course, I'd be glad to answer your questions. So it's my pleasure this evening to be here to give you an update on where we are with SACRT Forward and what's been happening in the past month or so. And on the screen here before you, you can see that we have developed officially our new name for the project. We also have a new logo that we've adopted for the project. And we also have a web page that we've created that's currently hosted on sacrt.com's website. So there's 3 very important things that have happened in the past month. Our web page, let's see if I can get this thing to work. Oh, I'm going to go back real quick. So I want to encourage you to go to sacrt.com's webpage. If you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see a box with this logo. You click on that logo, it'll take you to the web page, and you'll be able to see documents related to the project, and you can also register to sign up for our email list. And there's also an email address that you can send comments or questions to. So I would encourage you to at least go look at that, and also I want to encourage you to reach out to your folks and your constituents and tell them about the page and that they can sign up for instant email updates. So in the past month, we've had 2 very big, important meetings. The first one we held with our frontline employees. You may recall back in January, we did a frontline employee survey with our bus operators and light rail operators, transit agents, customer service representatives, anyone that interfaces with our riders. So from that, we asked folks if they would volunteer to sit in on focus groups. We had a very large number of folks say they wanted to participate. So we held those 2 weeks ago. It was over a 3-day process, and we had over close to 80 operators, transit agents, and customer service advocates come and spend at least 2 hours in these focus groups to talk about SACRT and our system and about SACRT Forward and what we want our new system to look like. So they had a lot to say, and we took a lot of notes, and very much looking forward to going through that with you in the future. This past week, we also held our first focus group meeting. We have a stakeholder resources group that we've created, and this group is represented by numerous public groups, agencies, not agencies, but community groups, special interest groups, folks that we've reached out to and have put on our mailing list, and we invited them to our first stakeholder resources group meeting. We had approximately 40 people show up to the meeting. It was here in this room, and it was a 4-hour workshop. So these folks gave up 4 hours from 3 to 7 p.m. Of their day to come and spend time with RT staff and also with Jarrett Walker contractors as well. We got some very good feedback in this meeting as well. So next steps, there's 3 big things coming up that I want you to be aware of. Obviously, you're familiar with the board workshop that's scheduled on the 23rd. Jarrett Walker will be here in person and will lead you through a workshop there at your meeting. We will continue a very intensive public involvement campaign throughout the month of April and into the month of May. So we will be all over the place doing pop-up workshops. We're going to have an interactive website thing as well. And then coming up the first week of June is one of the big highlights of our project. This is the Core Design Retreat. This is going to be a week-long intensive design effort for what our new system is going to look like. So these are the big 3 that I want to make you aware of. And I will answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, any questions? Dr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing I was going to suggest to our staff is I bought my own copy of Human Transit, the book upon which the consultant sort of bases their thoughts and philosophies. I just asked that maybe Henry, if we could get a copy for each board member. It's really insightful, and I think it'll help prepare us better for the meeting on the 24th.
It's a great idea. And I would also encourage you to visit their website and their blog site. Lots of good information.
It's just it's really good, helpful information because we're going to have to make a lot of different decisions.
We're actually getting enough of that for board members already.
Oh,
yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Good evening. Now I would like to provide an update on absolutely nothing. Okay. On microtransit, our microtransit project. So this is the microtransit project we've implemented in Citrus Heights. What we have been in service now for a little over 2 months. Here's where we kicked it off in February 12th, coming up on 2 months. And the most important thing, we've noticed a continual trend, upward trend in terms of ridership. We think that it's been very successful. We're getting very positive feedback to our initial pilot and launch. We are planning on expanding the pilot to include Orangevale to the east and Antelope to the west, and extend the hours of service from 7 to 7, which is what the hours are today, to 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., still Monday through Friday. We're finding bunching around the 7 o'clock time and around, at each end actually, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., kind of indicating demand for earlier and later service. So we're going to expand the service hours and see how that works. We're also beginning to see, in addition to the increased ridership, greater adoption of the app. There are 2 ways, as we may have told you, to schedule it. One is the way that we used to do it with the demand response service, where they call us. Now we just enter that information for them in the app, or you can use the app directly, and we're seeing a continual progression towards the app, which is a very good thing. So early findings, as I said, ridership's trending up. The app is easy to use for folks. We're seeing new customers. We haven't had to deny anyone a ride. We're staying within our 30-minute commitment to reservation time, which is working very well. Operators and dispatchers have taken to it. We're getting good information and good positive customer feedback. Our next step is we've just released on the website, and we will be doing more of this in April, our customer survey to see what's working, what's not, what people think. That should be very insightful, what our demographics look like now. We are continuing to watch, and as we expand, it's going to be really important that we stay within that 30-minute wait time, and we're looking at the impacts of that. We're looking at diversion from paratransit to the microtransit service, which is a cheaper way to provide the local trips in the paratransit world. We are looking at we're looking forward to the expansion, which is, as I mentioned, Orangevale and Antelope, and we'd like to make a connection to light rail in Folsom to connect to the larger RT system. And then we have, starting about the summertime, we'll go out to bid for a permanent microtransit software solution. What we're using now through Transloc is under a demonstration agreement. And we've got additional areas that we are actively looking at as microtransit projects. The Franklin Boulevard P-bid area, we're looking at the CBD, Arden Arcade, Carmichael. We have a meeting set up with Rancho Cordova to talk about options, and CSUS as well for options for microtransit, for the student housing, and we're struggling in where to fit in River Park because it's kind of an underserved, kind of abandoned area that would benefit from microtransit. We just need to figure out the best way to connect it. So that's our update. Any questions?
Okay, questions?
Yeah, you're not going to abandon River Park.
No, I didn't say abandon. I said we're finding out how to connect it.
Yeah, I know. There's a way, and if you need help working on that, I'm at your disposal.
I understand.
Any others?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Director.
Hold on one second. Sure. Even though we only put like 7 options there, actually we are submitting about 11 potential routes to the STA for them to fund us, which include the Folsom microtransit and the microtransit in Elk Grove and other areas too. So there are total 11 in the submission to the STA board.
Okay.
He just ate into your time.
It's not started yet, right? All right, well, I'll make this quick. So February, we had a strong financial results for February. There was a net surplus of approximately $200,000 for the month of February, and year to date, we're looking at about close to $2.5 million positive. The next slide we have is the deferred revenue slide. We talked about this at the last board meeting. Sure. Sorry, did I go too quick? There you go. Okay. The next slide is the deferred revenue slide. What we talked about in the last meeting is seeing this moving up is a good thing for RT, and you can see we actually just peaked over $500,000 for the month of February, and so that's a good sign for us. The next slide we talk about is the fare box recovery ratio, and we've decided to kind of present this a little bit different this month. It's important to know that we need to hit the 23% fare box recovery requirement, and if you include the Measure A as the supplemental revenue, then we definitely exceed that 23%. We're actually at 47% fare box recovery ratio. However, with some of these ridership initiatives and some of the improvements system-wide, the fare recovery ratio without the supplemental support has dipped, and that's expected. So we've gone from 22% down to 19%. On the ridership front, ridership for February is slightly down compared to the goal. It's just slightly, though. However, what I did notice this in these trends is the past 2 months, when you compare fiscal year 18 to 17, you'll see that we have a positive trend there where we're actually doing well compared to last year. We're kind of in line with last year as compared to the prior months. We were below last year's ridership. So this I see as kind of a positive trend that we're working towards. And that's pretty much it. That concludes the presentation for the financial report.
Okay, questions? Thank you. Does that conclude your report, Henry?
One more here.
One more? Okay.
Yes, I want to give you an update on the student pilot program. So one thing we like to do is after either during or at the end of a pilot program, we like to give feedback to the board. Sometimes it's in an issue paper. We thought it'd be better to just put it through as some slides. And what we talk about is ridership has been a main focus here. And sometimes some of the work you don't see immediately with ridership, but we are doing a lot here. Most transit agents actually have been studying this for a while, and they've been giving a lot of conclusions on why things have gone up, why things have gone down, and what is the cause of the decrease. What's different about us is I don't think we're just studying it. We're looking for solutions and implementing actions quickly. So what we did is we created a group here, a cross-functional group with the planning, operations, and finance staff and revenue, and we created some goals and objectives. We had 4 of them. The first one was finding new ways to improve ridership. The second one was making rides more affordable. The third one is promoting long-term use, and I think some of the board members have mentioned this in the past, is let's make these riders be riders forever for a long period of time. And then the other thing is understand that some of these solutions that we're going to bring forward, there's going to be a revenue impact, so we want to minimize that impact as much as possible. So in just a very short period of time, we actually sought board approval and we implemented a student fare reduction program, and we're really proud of that. The next thing we did is we came up with an extensive outreach to schools in the community, and we've listed some of those right here. And what we found is those results paid off. And this slide basically shows a couple of things. One, it shows the student pass sale quantities on the left. That's the chart on the left. On the right is the student ridership. And you'll actually see that passes, and that's a good measurable quantity, increased 27% and as high as 34% in just a 3-month period of time. And we have to compare this period of this year compared to January of 2017 because we have cyclical ridership and past purchasing patterns. And at the same time, we saw the ridership grow about by 30,000. So the next question is, how did this impact revenues? And we saw that on average, we saw a small hit to revenues, about $21,500, but the good news here is we were a little concerned about some of the increases to cost, and there was no new increases to cost as a result of this program. So that's a real positive. And then some interesting facts that we learned here is that students preferred electronic fare options as opposed to the traditional media. So this concluded our objectives. We were really proud of this, and we think it's been a very successful effort. We intend to come back with this Title VI analysis and a permanent recommendation in the next few months. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Director Chanel.
Ben, have you looked at the numbers? I know what we were charging was $10 for half a month, right? $20 a month. $20. What would we have had to charge just to break even, given the increased ridership? Do you know?
Let me think about that. Let me just confer. Just a second. Jim, do you have some?
Get a calculator out.
I know.
It's a human calculator.
Yeah. Because do you know how many monthly riders we had, or increased? You had 30,000 extra rides.
Right.
But what does that break down into unduplicated riders? Do we have any?
I think what we'd have to do is we'd have to look at the passes sold and kind of find that sweet spot to.
Right.
Yeah, and I think. It's tough to. I probably, without giving you a quick answer, it'd be better.
I don't need it now, but I think if we can look at that, I mean, I think this is great. If we can, as you said, we want to change culture and habit. We want to create lifetime riders. So that's all good. If we could figure out how to do this, so it's not costing us dollars. You know, if it's going to $11 or $12, and we can make it even permanent at that point, where we know we're covering our costs and getting this benefit, hopefully, of lifetime riders. I think that's what I would love to see, that data.
I will say I do know that there was, I don't remember exactly that sweet point, but I remember if we went too low, then we had significant drop. Like if we dropped it from a monthly pass from 20 down to 10, there was going to be a significant hit.
Right.
So it's somewhere in between, probably 20 to 25 is somewhere around that spot for a monthly pass, and obviously semi-monthly, you just divide it by 2. But we'll get you the exact numbers to see how to reduce that revenue hit, but still get the increase in riders.
That'd be great. And we're still in process of doing this, right? We have 3 more months.
Yes, we still.
So we'll have that data as well. So I mean, we can wait if the trend continues on the numbers of riders. I just think that would be fabulous.
And this is the trend that we're talking about. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Patrick.
Okay, anyone else? Nope.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Tartagia.
Well, this is the conundrum of, do we consider that this is an interim pilot program report? And this was the question that I had posed back, and Steve said that the board had heard a completed report in the past. I will note that there is YOLO that was put out there, and we don't have a completed report back on that. I believe that there are several other pilot programs that are ongoing beyond this, should we say, smart card fair, and I note that you don't mention that you did manage to alter it so that it would make better accommodations as a mobile app, and I think that has served you well.
All right, thank you. Next item.
Item number 11, information, withdrawing proposed changes to Title III of the Sacramento Administrative Code relating to the board's rules of procedure. And Laura Ham is here to answer any questions.
Okay, so for this one, we actually, the staff has been taking comments from the public as well as the board members, and we decided to give it some more time, so this will be coming back with another recommendation in the future. Primarily, we're looking at changing the agenda as far as the order of items on the agenda. So, any questions? Okay, we do have a couple of cards. Jeffrey Tartagia. Keep in mind, Jeffrey, we will be hearing this again.
That was part of the question, because with withdrawing it, and when Steve suggested, I thought tabling it in the past and it being brought up in April, this left a attitude or feeling. Was it just public and staff, or did this actually go to the board, and what discussion took place? And by your own statement just now, that this has apparently been further discussed in some manner or means beyond staff and the public, because you just told me that you were going to, in the fast, bring this back again as a matter. And I puzzle, because if it was withdrawn at the last board meeting, and here you are withdrawing the proposed changes to Title V, I'm uncertain what changes changed from last meeting to now this proposal of what withdrawing, and now you are telling me in the future it is coming back as a new proposal. Is that staff doing it? Is it public? Is it various board members that have discussed this in some manner before? Or is it just simply the board has discussed it with the staff, the public has discussed it with board members and staff, and out of that you've realized that whatever you initially brought forward was a powder keg, that you're not clearly knowing what you're wanting to say and change?
Thank you, and I will say all of the above. Next, Barbara Stanton.
Okay, now you just put the kibosh to my...
Don't feel compelled to stand up there.
Well, you just put the kibosh to my... we support withdrawing the proposed changes to Title III and urge the board to do the same, but now you're bringing it back, so we'll have more comments in the future.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Item number 12, resolution authorizing staff to release the Sacramento Regional Transit District preliminary FY19 operating and capital budgets, and set notice of a public hearing for May 14th, 2018, presented by Brent Berniker.
All right. Hello again. So we've completed the 2019 preliminary operating and capital budget, and there's some numbers up there in front of you, but I want to just talk about some of the highlights for the 2019 budget. There's been a slight increase to the operating budget. It's about a 2.6% increase. The majority of the capital budget program is based on new grant opportunities. There was no significant changes to any of the service levels, and there's been no changes to the fare structure. So those are the highlights. The numbers I'll just rattle out really quick, but the operating budget is set right now at about $165.5 million, and the capital budget's about $96.1 million. On this next chart, we show the operating revenues for the operating budget, and as you can see, Measure A revenues, which is the local sales tax, makes up about 26% of the operating revenues. RT only receives about 1/6 of a cent, or 17% of the total sales tax collected, and this is low compared to other transit agencies. Most of the transit agencies that we look at have a dedicated tax or a much higher funding level. So what we wanted to do is kind of show you what that would look like if in a what we call the ideal revenue model. How would that look? And what we show is, in that case, if a Measure A took about 62% of our budget, then we had fares about 23%, then we could actually reduce that state assistance to about 9%, and then we could use the capital money and set that aside for grants, repair, and actually for grants it would help us make us more competitive because we'd have a larger match. A lot of times these grants say you have to have a 20% or 30% match, but if you come in higher, you become much more competitive. So we want to work towards that as our goal. The next slide we show is, where do the dollars go? A lot of people ask us, if I put $1 in, where does it go? So the best way to think of this is, if we receive $1, 88 cents goes back to service. 12 cents goes back to supporting the organization and the service levels. On the next slide, what we do is we kind of break that down a little bit further. Where does that service costs go? And you would say about half of that goes to bus, about a third goes to rail, and the rest goes to either paratransit, accessible services, and public safety. This next chart is the capital budget, and there's not a lot to show on this one because basically what we're doing in this capital budget is, as we apply for these new grants, which makes up the majority of this budget, about $88.9 million, we set that aside, and then the rest of that capital budget is to do minor updates, whatever we can afford, and then the light rail fleet enhancement, that's one of our biggest projects. We're trying to set some funds aside, and that's where we're setting aside SB1 because of the volatility of that money. And so when you look forward, what is the outlook on some of these sources? And what we say is federal funds are always volatile. They fluctuate, and there's a little bit of volatility there. The future debt service is something that we're really concerned about, not this fiscal year, but next fiscal year. So we need to make sure that we're set up correctly now so that when the debt service comes in place, we can afford it. This isn't something that we're just doing internally, but I've been meeting with the rating agencies, and they've actually expressed that as well. They want to make sure that we're spending lower now so that when that debt service comes, we can afford it. A couple other things. In the past 2 years, we've been settling some claims from accidents that occurred about 3 to 5 years ago. And so what we're seeing is some higher payouts in some of those claims than what we originally anticipated. So that's causing some increases to some of our expenses on the claim side. And then another thing that we want to bring up is, aside from the budget, the major challenge that we have here is liquidity. When you talk to some of the rating agencies or see some of the reports, they express that RT has some of the lowest cash on hand for a transit agency. That causes concern for them. It causes concern for me and all of us here. And then also the operating reserve balance we have is very low. So the two of those really make it a major challenge that we kind of work towards solving. And that we do through a balanced budget and so forth. So the next slide is just our budget schedule. It shows where we are today. May 14th, we'll bring back this as public hearing, and then June 11th, we'll bring back the final budget. Are there any questions?
Questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Next item.
We need
I'm sorry,
a
I'm sorry.
motion. Well, we also need a motion and second after your speakers.
Yes, but first we have Jeffrey Tartagia.
Last year, there was a discussion of timing of, should we say, for budget, hopefully some additional hours. Last year, paratransit demonstrated a budget other than a pie chart. Patrick, you had a copy of it, and I know Henry ended up with a copy of it. Was that not a better procedure of explaining what is in, shall we say, the annual budget and in the capital budget? I raised that question back since once again what we're seeing is pie charts rather than an explanation of expenditures, and I will use the example that $3.3 million was borrowed from SACOG this year. Where is that going to be reflectively seen in our larger budget stream? I'm so sure there's some answers, but just as an example, that's one I offer through there is how funds are tracked. One of the things that came up at the MAC meeting was the fact that it seemed Measure A money was far more, shall we say, a part of RT's budget now. That's a change.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
There are 28 pages of the details in the issue paper, so if you get a chance, please read that.
Thank you. Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Natoli, second by the Vice Chair. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Motion carries at 100 votes. Next item, item number 13, information, presentation on shorter and longer-term concepts for reimagining the Watt I-80 Transit Center, introduced by Laura Ham.
Good evening. We are certainly glad to be here tonight. We've been talking about the Watt I-80 light rail station for quite some time, done quite a bit of public outreach, and are pleased to present some concepts to you for improving the station. I'd like to invite Tracy Canfield, who is a senior long-range planner with RT, to present the report.
Good evening. We were fortunate a while back to receive a Caltrans planning grant for this project in order to engage the public and collect information on improvements that could be made at the transit center. Just to put a little context into the Watt I-80 Transit Center, it is our busiest bus light rail transfer center in our system. And the facility serves both light rail as well as 8 RT routes and 1 Placer County route. But we move 3,500 riders through this facility every day, which equates to about 1 million a year, which you could also say is about 1 out of every 20 of our total ridership. And so the challenge of this site, besides this level of activity, is also the aging infrastructure and the isolated location of the facility between the in the middle of the freeway. And so this attracts, because of this isolation, it attracts illegal activity as well as unsanitary behaviors, and requires a lot of work for maintenance and security, as we've had some presentation in the past about. So this creates an unpleasant experience for our passengers. However, during our outreach process, it was made very clear that our passengers still rely on this facility despite these challenges very heavily. We are very lucky to partner with Walk Sacramento, who did a wonderful job on leading our outreach effort for this study. And I'd like to also thank all the participants who came to our events. We had quite a few. Over 80 people attended the meetings. 170 people were engaged at the pop-up events that Walk Sacramento did at the Transit Center and at American River College. And we also had over 40 participants at the walk audits. 270 people gave feedback online, as well as Walk Sacramento interviewed over 20 stakeholders and individual groups over the past 6 months. So we came up with 4 concepts during this study that we were able to evaluate closer. And the one we have up on the screen here is looking at short-term improvements, because anything that we look at in the long term is going to take a long time. And so there was a clear message that we need to start making some immediate improvements at the transit center. So this would include, most importantly, replacing the 2 elevators, providing more wayfinding and customer information, updating the customer information out there. There's a big demand for that, as well as just making touch-ups around the facility and adding more lighting. And one of our biggest demands also is to look at restricting the access to some of the alcoves and hidden spaces, particularly under the underpass. So some of the long-term improvements that were discussed were basically tearing down the existing structures and rebuilding them, the stairwell and elevator structures, and opening it up. So again, getting rid of hiding places, opening up more lighting, widening the sidewalks for better access to the transit center, as well as adding monument signs, which we've been doing at a number of our other stations. So this concept here could actually be done on both sides of Watt Avenue, or we could just look at doing it on the west side and actually closing off the underpass to passengers accessing the transit center on the underpass, and instead possibly provide a mid-block crossing on Watt Avenue between the two bus stops. So this is going to entail, obviously, a lot of partnership with the county and Caltrans to accomplish some of these off-site improvements. So the fourth concept we looked at to look at the feasibility was, what would it be if we closed the Watt I-80 station and moved our routes to Roseville Road? And it was attractive to our passengers that having the same level boarding, for bus to light rail, but there is a big concern about the impacts on schedules and costs for transfers, as well as there is no pedestrian and bicycle access to this site. It was built as a park and ride station, and so because of these reasons, staff felt it's not a viable alternative to relocate the transit center out here. It would actually, we estimate that it would decrease ridership, as well as cost an additional $500,000 a year for operating the bus lines to come out to this transit center, or to this station. So to move forward, we're looking at the next steps at, of course, pursuing more funding for longer term improvements. We want to also take a look at the results from the SAC RT Forward project to see what's recommended for infrastructure needs on Watt Avenue. And then we will need to conduct environmental reviews and design for long-term improvements. And again, this will involve partnering with the county and Caltrans to do the off-site and pedestrian improvements, which are very critical to making this transit center successful. And as soon as possible, we do need to replace the two elevators that are there because they don't work right now. So, and budget for additional improvements. This would include increasing maintenance at the facility because what we're doing now isn't sufficient, as well as maintaining the security coverage that we do have out there now that's working pretty well now. And finally, it's important that RT works with our partners to identify strategies and resources to improve the neighborhood and build upon the momentum that we've developed, and that, again, Walk Sacramento helped us with building the capacity with our stakeholders. And the new infrastructure is not going to solve all the issues out here. So we need to work on all the problems out here and be a partner with the neighborhood. So we've already started discussions with Mercy Housing, as well as the Watt P bid that's out there now about making these improvements. So those are our plans, and welcome any questions.
Questions? Yes, Director Budge.
Yeah, Tracy, just briefly, you've talked about options and discarded some that simply were not workable, but things like potentially taking down the structures and opening up the area. How will you decide, what will be the ways in which you decide which of those kinds of things you're going to do?
Well, we will still need to continue going through a design process, but also an environmental review process. So through both of those, which will take about a year or so after we actually do find some funding. Through those process, we'll develop and refine alternatives more and determine what is feasible, whether that mid-block crossing is feasible or if there's other solutions to this. And so the images I showed earlier are just some concepts of, really showing how to open it up, but we're still refining ideas.
Any others? All right. Jeffrey Tartagia.
Well, now I'm going to get in trouble with Steve because we're back to the comments before starting out with, which is one, the riders. That's something that I will say to you, what your input and what you're coming up with for this. So please don't throw out from your consultant of the Roseville Road that seemed to be the first option you were pursuing, because there's some very valuable insights in there that still, I think, has a regard for your I-80 location, and it's just for the future. So when you do your retreat, please look at some of the options that Roseville Road offer to you. I hope again that when you do your retreat in there that you examine what the heck is your rider, because it seems like you guys don't know who really rides the system for this route optimization. And in this timetable of frequencies, but back to this particular subject here of I-80. As I've said at the beginning, you need to get rid of the east elevator. But here you are, and you're now talking about another year, and think how many years this has been a problem. Signage, please make something that's going to be not next year that you're going to do something on this. Lot lacking, and very little this year seem to have gone ahead.
Mike Birnbaum.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy and members of the board. It was an honor and pleasure to work on this project and put in an extensive number of hours. Some members even of Ride Downtown 916 attended workshops in North Highlands and agreed that moving to Roseville Road eliminates the potential of use of an elevator and the elevator breaking down in the middle of using it, or the difficulty of using stairs. Watt 90 is the only station which has the elevator and stairs concept, and at times the difficulty of making a transfer from the east end to the west end or the west end to the east end. Moving the activity of transferring between bus to bus and bus to rail or rail to bus to Roseville Road, where everything is at level, makes it much easier and seamless for the rider and access to riders of all abilities. It was a very difficult decision to come to this and to recommend to you that after thoroughly thinking very hard about this, that a move makes more sense in a project of this nature and of this high level of sensitivity, but safety, security, and ease of use of the system is a first and foremost priority. And one thing we have to think about is, don't we want it not only as safe for our own constituencies, but even members of our own family, to put safety, security, and ease of use of things in life first? And when I heard that from Chief Hines at the meeting, who unfortunately wasn't able to be with us this evening, so I want to carry some of her words to this meeting tonight. Yeah, we have to really think about that. And what happened to the officer on the day of that incident at Watt 90, and part of the reason why we're here this evening. Roseville Road just makes more sense. And I know I spent many hours from Anaheim to Sacramento returning from a ball game writing up the service change proposal. So hopefully going forward it will be given some consideration too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nick Brandt.
Okay, there's this one morning when I got to Watt I-80 light rail station, saw a homeless lady sleeping on the bench, but that one day I alerted SAC RT on the app, told the police officers, then once they got out there, they cleared her away from the station because she was just sitting on the bench sleeping, had her stuff out. Well, it does help us out a lot. If we keep reporting stuff, we know that we see homelesses,
we need to keep reporting it because it just helps RT. And there's this one day I was getting offered labor at Watt I-80 on one Thursday, saw the stairs getting pressure washed. It's a good thing. You guys are doing we're doing a great thing. We need to keep pressure washing the stairs, keep cleaning the stairs, keep everything clean. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Russell Rawlings.
Good evening, Chair and members of the board. I first just want to really applaud staff and everyone's effort on this issue. This is honestly, I think, one of the biggest issues facing RT at the moment because it is literally a transit hub. This Watt I-80, for all of its problems, connects the whole region. And I know that the decisions that you are going to make are going to be difficult. I know that the community is also giving you various points of feedback. I do think that the one consideration, though, is honestly the ease of use of the system. And I think that looking at what relocation would look like would put a very big burden on the entire community, that region, in terms of relearning how all those connections are made. And more importantly, the development of the Mercy Housing Project, those residents would be missing a major connection to the entire system. I know it's a difficult decision. I think that all of the capacity that would have been put into an effort to move should also be folded into looking at making a better, beautiful station. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell.
Item number 14, San Joaquin Joint Powers Authority meeting summary in your packages of March 23rd, 2018. If Director Hume has any additions?
No, just that due to a funeral, Mr. Drake and I sat in the conference room at City Hall and phoned into the meeting, so that was very convenient for me. We did pass our business plan.
All right. Mike Barnbaum.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy. First of all, to Director Hume, my apologies and condolences go out to what happened that day. Sorry you were not able to attend in person. As far as attending in person, I had the ability to ride the last direct train to at least to a date with the JPA meeting on the schedule and to Fresno. Very exciting group, a full room in the chambers at the Fresno County Board of Supervisors room. As Director Hume stated, the board did approve going forward with a draft business plan. It will come back at the next meeting for final approval. The draft business plan includes not only the start of the morning express on May 7th, scheduled train arrival of 7:41 a.m. To Sacramento Valley Station. The JPA has reached out to RT to have a booth and a table and a big festivity at the station on May 7th. If you are available, try and be there about 7 a.m. For the train arrival by 7:41 a.m. It's the first arrival of the morning express again on Monday, May 7th. The JPA did approve the next meeting date and location will be Friday, May 25th, and that'll be in Stockton. Hours are pending, but most likely will be from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And in the business plan, the JPA wanted to note for the record planning for the 8th and 9th round trip and a morning express to the Bay Area. In planning for the 8th and 9th round trip, those would go to Sacramento, but not Sacramento Valley Station. They're going to use the new Sacramento subdivision rather than the current Fresno subdivision to align routings north of Stockton. But in order to do that, there's going to be an item on the agenda Wednesday at the Elk Grove City Council meeting about a multimodal station that's been put a lot of effort and study into it. Possibly new Sacramento stations might include City College, Midtown around 19th and R, Railroad Avenue near Del Paso Boulevard by the Triage shelter, and a location in North Natomas, of which they hope would be a shuttle service to Sacramento International Airport. And they're going to work with RT on some concepts for that in planning for the 8th and 9th round trip. So, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Moving on, the board is going to, oh, sorry. If there's any other reports, ideas, or questions from directors.
Any?
Seeing none, the board will recess to close session with the following items. Number 1, Antoinette Satchel, plaintiff versus Regional Transit, does 1 through 20 inclusive defendants. Number 2, Holly Euler, Brian Euler on behalf of himself and his guardian ad litem for Nash Euler and Cade Euler plaintiffs versus Sacramento Regional Transit and does 1 through 20 inclusive defendants. And number 3, Pamela Terrell versus Sacramento Regional Transit. Board is recessed to close session.